Tucker Carlson, of all people, might have just given one of the best and most important interviews since the war on Gaza started. He had on his show Christian Orthodox nun Mother Agapia to talk about what life is like in the Holy Land for Christian Palestinians. Because the whole world doubts everything that Palestinians say about their own suffering, having somebody like this, a Christian Orthodox nun, coming out and corroborating what Palestinians have been telling the world for decades, it does something. It carries this message outside of the echo chamber that most of us live in. The audience of Tucker Carlson is not the same audience as like Hassan Piker or Kyle Kulinski. This has a reach well beyond that. It reaches audiences that don't tune into left-wing programming. They are being misled by mainstream and right-wing media. So to have somebody like this, whose character is hard to besmirch, talking about what life is like for Christians in the Holy Land, I think it gives everybody an idea, just a little taste of what everybody's going through over there. Christian, Muslims, everybody. So I've pulled a couple of clips that I think really highlight some of the more interesting parts that I found in this interview. I'm going to go over them with you, but I recommend watching the entire thing. It's about 90 minutes, but it flies by because it is so interesting. Mother Agapia is a very, very interesting person. She's lived a very rich life. She knows a lot of stuff. She knows a lot of people. She gives a lot of firsthand accounts of things that she's seen, and it's just worth your time, even if it is Tucker Carlson. Let's get into it. So the interview kind of starts with Mother Agapia kind of giving Tucker Carlson a glimpse into life over there. And she tells him a few stories. One of them that really caught my attention was about the father of a friend of hers who needed to get cancer treatment. And because when you're living in the West Bank as a Palestinian, you have different rights. You drive on different roads, as she's going to explain. You have different color license plates. And Israel needs to give you a permit in order to go seek medical attention. But here goes a cancer patient that Mother Agapia knows, who was denied the permit that he needed in order to go and seek treatment. I'll play a small clip from that.
Is from near Jenin, which normally would take you about an hour and a half to get between the two. Her father has prostate cancer. In order to get treatment, there was only hospitals, nothing in the Northwest Bank could deal with it, either in Jerusalem or in Hebron, which is south of Bethlehem. And last year, or a couple of years ago, he was able to go to Jerusalem with a permit to get the treatment. But this year, the Israelis wouldn't let him. So it took him over 5 hours to get down to Hebron, and a man who's old and sick to doing things. So whether it's for those kind of activities or practicing your faith or visiting your relatives, which is part of Christian life too, right? You want to celebrate the holidays with your family and friends. It becomes very difficult.
They have to give you a permit. Even though you might be in Palestine, you can't live outside of the rule of Israel. And that is just so insane to hear. That's not even their country. That's not their land. They're not supposed to have any control over these people.
So why do American Christian churches send money to a government that does this to Christians?
Well, I think the ones that send money that support the settlements are obviously the Christian Zionists. There's an organization called Christians United for Israel, Pastor John Hagee. I was in Washington a few weeks ago because, they had a conference in Baltimore. So it's slowly growing an awareness by other Christians in America that just like many Jews are protesting and saying, not in our name, and the Jewish Voice for Peace, there has to be much more done by the Christians in America because these Christian Zionists are speaking in our name. Someone like Ted Cruz, Senator Cruz, is saying and doing what he's doing because he's following a Christianity that is not the Christianity of the Holy Land. It's not the Christianity of a Catholic or an Orthodox or a traditional Christian. It's a heretical belief.
What is Christian Zionism?
Mm-hmm. As far as I understand it, they believe in the idea of the rapture. They believe that it's sort of this cruel bargain they have going with Israel, because basically what they say that they're going to be swooped up into heaven, right? And then there's going to be 1,000-year kingdom, and then there'll be the end of the world and the judgment by Christ, and he'll come back. This is a false. It was condemned as a heresy in 381. Because basically, there is no 1,000-year millennium to come, no 1,000-year period. The end we are in that time period now. And so it's a false belief there. And
So basically what they're arguing is that Jesus coming the first time wasn't enough?
Yeah, and it's like, in a way, it's denying the Messiah.
And here she's making an excellent point about Christians in America supporting settlement expansions that displace Christians in the Holy Land. And I'm not an expert on Christianity, okay? But she is. She knows what's going on. She's letting it be known that the Mike Huckabees and the Ted Cruzes of the world have their shit all twisted in a bunch. They don't know what they're talking about. They're waiting for some 1,000-year millennium where after everyone gets raptured, they're going to live this 1,000 years up in heaven, I guess, while Jesus dukes it out with some demons down here on earth. And Mother Agapia is letting it be known that's all made up. That's all made up. So all these heifers you're trying to fly over to Israel, all this nonsense that you're trying to pull as if God needs the assist from Mike Huckabee and Ted Cruz of all people and Lindsey Graham, doesn't need your help. Mind your business. And instead of trying to bring about things that you don't need to be bringing about, how about paying attention to the Christians who are living where Jesus lived? And that's an excellent point, because there are historical sites that have been around for centuries that are now being trampled and disrespected by Israelis. And Christians in America don't seem to care because they're thirsty to bring about some sort of doomsday. Right? It's like foie gras. You know, you're fattening up the goose to cut out its liver and eat it. They're just making sure they can send as many Israelis as they can over there so that there can be as many Jews as that there can be in that area. And then Armageddon comes, and if they don't convert, you're off this planet. Lambs to a slaughter. Unbelievable stuff. And I'm so glad that somebody other than just regular YouTubers and news anchors is dispelling this, because this isn't actually, you don't have to ask her to cite her sources. You know she knows. You know she knows. Here, Mother Agapia is telling another really interesting story that I think paints a picture of what day-to-day life is like in Palestine. There's a couple. They want to get married. They cannot get married in Israel because interfaith marriage is not allowed. The couple gets married outside Israel. They come back and they have a baby. Maternal grandmother wants to see her grandbaby. Totally normal. Israel isn't permitting you to leave your little area where you're surrounded by settlements to go to where your daughter lives.
One time, there was a woman who, her daughter, they were from Bethlehem, married a Christian who lived in Jerusalem. So he had rights to be in the city of Jerusalem, have blue ID. But the mother, when the daughter gave birth to their first child, she didn't have any way to go to see her daughter because it would be illegal for her to go into Jerusalem to get there. So I had the school van, and I went to Bethlehem, go get her. And a lot of times we'd have a little more leeway. If I go through a checkpoint, they'll see it's a nun, and I'd go pass through a lot easier than someone else would. So I was able to get her through to be able to go see her daughter at the birth of her granddaughter.
They're not supposed to be there. The settlements are not supposed to be there. Israel's not supposed to be there. It's not their country. They move with this kind of impunity and have been. So no wonder now it makes sense why everything feels like anti-Semitism. They got caught rough riding Palestinians live on camera. I love that she's telling the story because it just puts you in that place, right? It puts you in that state of mind. I want you to imagine that somebody in your family had a baby and you want to go visit them. They're not far away. They're just a few kilometers away. But you have to get permission from a government that's not your government, that is actively stealing your land. You have to get their permission to go visit your family. Are people supposed to love Israel when this is how they're treating them? This is bananas. It's such a simple story, but it really paints a picture. I gotta say, after years and years of watching Tucker Carlson use his powers for evil by going after minorities with his brilliant interviewing skills that are so frustratingly good, it's really refreshing to see him use his powers for good. And don't get me wrong, it's still fuck Tucker Carlson. Like one good deed isn't gonna wipe his slate clean, but at a time like this, you take your allies where you can find them. You know what I mean? I saw Anna Kasparian on his show, and for a second I was like, but I get it. There's a genocide going on, and you got to kind of just get over your feelings about how this man has made you feel in the past, because he's reaching people that we cannot reach, right? People tune in to what they know. Yeah, I don't go online and seek out Fox News. People who are watching Fox News don't go online and seek out Hassan Piker. So to have this bridge into their world, it's invaluable. And as much as I hate the guy, I've admired his skills, even though I've hated them in the past. But it is really cool to see him. Like, hey, he's so good at playing dumb. Really? Christians? They don't get a pass? I don't understand. America's a Christian. Can you help me to understand this? He's so good at that. He knows exactly what's going on, but he's so good at leading you to give him an answer as though he were a layman. And it's condescending if you pay hard enough attention, but I doubt people do because he also has the gift of making the interview entertaining. This part of the interview really, really touched me. She's talking about how there is a feeling amongst Palestinians in the West Bank watching what's happening in Gaza, thinking to themselves, we're next. And that's because no one is stopping what's happening in Gaza. I think that has shocked people. I think it's even shocked Israelis because they were not expecting to have this much free reign. In the past, even presidents like Ronald Reagan have called them up and said, shut it down. Shut all that bloodshed down. It's too much. But now, I mean, it's openly talked about in Israeli media that, or not, it was reported in Israeli media that officials are saying, as long as we kill 100 or around 100 Palestinians a day, it's not really going to make news anymore. The idea that you're watching something happen, it's so close to where you are. It's not far at all. And you just know that the hatred that they have for people in the West, in Gaza, they have that hatred for you too. She talks about this a lot. The feeling of like animosity and anger that comes from these roided up Israeli IDF soldiers. The way they enjoy holding you at checkpoints, the glee they get from exercising that power over you, making you wait for no reason. Hours and hours and hours sometimes. I live in Toronto and I know what it's like when I wait at a line for something that's completely reasonable. You know what I mean? I've waited in lines like where I go to wait in line for something that I really, really want and I get frustrated even though I chose to be there. Can you imagine having to go to work and you pass this road every single day and there is some child in a uniform and they're holding a machine gun to your face and you have to stand there for hours while they humiliate you, rob you, do anything they want to you? You can't call anyone. Palestinians are supposed to have their own police in certain areas. The West Bank is, as Mother Agapia is going to point out, the West Bank area is carved up into 3 sections, right? There's section A, B, and C. And Israel controls, I think, most of sections. It's so dystopian. Could you live like that? I don't think I could. And what if you had an emergency? She talks about people who are in labor, giving birth, people have cancer. What if you or your loved one was feeling ill or sick and needed medical attention and there was an ambulance so close you could see it, you could hear its engine running, and some soldiers just holding the ambulance driver at gunpoint saying, no, you'll go to them when I feel like it. They're just let you bleed out a little bit more. What it must be like when anyone who has a baby and they discover it's a boy, the fear that grips them because that little boy is only going to have so long to be a child. When they reach that adolescence age, that prepubescent age, they are a target. Mother Agapia talks about it. And Palestinians have been saying it for years. Israelis basically think that any young man is Hamas, is a terrorist. If you're young and able-bodied. There are religious sites that she talks about where Israel will say, today only men over 50 can go to this site. It's not even supposed to be controlled by them. What kind of people can live under this kind of subjugation and not resist? And I'm happy that she says what she says about resistance.
Why punish the Christians for Islamic terror?
Because I don't think it's Islamic terror that's taking place in the first place. I think we have to disabuse ourselves of that notion that this is a battle between Muslim and Jew, or that, constantly you heard after the October event was that Hamas. Even to this day, we hear it's Hamas, yes. Hamas. What is Hamas? Hamas are people who have had their homes taken from them, who, if they live in Gaza, have not been basically been in an open air prison for certainly the last 20 years.
She's saying what so many of us want to say but can't. That when we look at what is happening to one group of people by another group of people, we understand, as Piers Morgan would say, the right, the duty, and responsibility to resist. Of course, we're not rooting for the same side as Piers Morgan, but I think you all understand. And here's somebody who's living there, who follows the teachings of Christ, who's a pretty great guy, is the way I hear it. Something to think about. Okay, we're coming to the end here. A couple more points. I love this part here. She does an excellent job of dispelling the myth that Israel left in 2005. How many times have people said that on Piers Morgan's show, on every news show that'll have them? We left Gaza in 2005. They could have become the Riviera of the Middle East. Blah, 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 blah. They didn't leave.
Even when the Israelis withdrew from Gaza, they didn't leave open borders. There was no freedom for people in Gaza to develop their economy. If I know people who wanted to try to go to school in America and couldn't get out of Gaza, had a Fulbright scholarship and weren't able to leave.
I mean, couldn't get out.
Israel didn't give them permission. So what kind of freedom is that?
And thank you, Mother Agapia, for making it known. They didn't leave. They just receded to the border. They always talk about, oh my God, we even dug up our people. Well, it's not really the fault of Palestinians that Jewish people have to be buried in Jewish cemetery, okay? And you guys were probably super afraid that people were going to dig up your deceased because that's what you'd be doing to Palestinians, okay? You're always afraid of someone doing to you what you've been doing to them. Israel is holding on to corpses, crying now that Palestinians won't give back the deceased hostages. Israel's holding on to hundreds of corpses. Israel has admitted to harvesting the organs of Palestinians. Israel has admitted to stealing Palestinian children and giving them to Israeli families. That's like what Canada did with the freaking schools, residential schools. Thank you, I'm the gem. Heinous, heinous, heinous stuff. So no wonder they're terrified. No wonder they're terrified. Of course, they didn't want to leave their bodies there because they thought eye for an eye. But Palestinian people are showing us time and again that they are potentially some of the best people on the planet because they don't look for revenge. They're often just looking for peace. Palestine is basically stuck between a desert, that's the Egypt's Sinai desert, the frigging sea, and the wall. The wall that Israel built, that you cannot leave unless you have some sort of Israeli permit. Everyone has color-coded IDs. Israel controls the population registry. When someone's born, when someone dies, it all goes to some sort of Israeli registration office so they can keep tabs on you. All of your phones have to have Israeli spy software on them. They'll just take it from you, tell you that they're putting it on there and give it. What are you going to do? Who are you going to call? Ghostbusters? They don't operate in that part of the world. Just a little bit before she talks about this feeling of like, we're next in the West Bank, she describes a friend of hers whose grandfather had tended these olive trees that were on his land that was arbitrarily confiscated by Israel. You're not allowed to be here anymore. It's my house.
And I remember sitting at the home of one of those people in Bet Jala, and they had lived in the center of town. It was his father's home, and then he built a new one near the Talitha Kumi Lutheran School. And I literally was sitting with them one afternoon, and he gets a call from his brother. The Israelis are here. They're pulling up our olive trees, cutting them down on some of their land. And he ran over. He collected as many of the trees as he could. Military order. That's what it was. They just go and do it, even though it's not their land. And then military order, nothing you can do. They have jeeps and weapons. You're not going to stop them. But he was able to take some of those trees. This shows the resiliency, and the word is samud. It's like, it's a quiet persistence. This is our land and we're going to stay here. And this man is a doctor who studied in Hungary. He took those olive trees and they now are on a plot of land next to his new house and trying to grow. So it's like, I'm not sure what Israel is trying to do.
If you don't think this stuff happens, look up what happened to Bella and Gigi Hadid's dad. He took in some refugees from the Holocaust and then he came home one day after vacation and they told him, you don't live here anymore. This is Israel's now. They do this. Israeli Zionists do this. So anyhow, this man's grandfather tended olive trees on his land. Israel confiscated it and they were ripping up the trees because they like to plant, it's so amazing. All my life watching TV and, pop culture, there's always this reference to planting a tree in Israel. I saw it in American Dad. I saw it on so many shows, but they like to plant non-native trees. That's a sick joke in it that we didn't know. So they're ripping up this man's olive trees probably to plant some European pine trees or some nonsense. But the man runs over there and he picks up the trees that were dug up out of the ground and he tries his best to replant as many of them that he can. So they're growing now on his new property. That is the resilience of Palestinian people that Israel cannot quash no matter how hard they try. She talks about a man whose car was just destroyed by a tank and how the next day she just saw him chilling on top of his car, smoking, having a cup of tea.
But again, that same resiliency of the Palestinians, the Samud, I have a photograph He's actually the father of one of the priests now in Bethlehem. And he's sitting on his car that had been smashed by the Israelis, just with a smile, kind of like, you're not going to stop us. We're going to carry on. You did this to me, but I'm going to carry on.
It made me think of Sinwar on the couch and how everyone emulated that in a couch full of, surrounded by rubble and destruction. Palestinians are not leaving. That's their home. We see Israelis just dipping to Ben Gurion Airport the second things get hard. Palestinians live on their land, they fight for their land, and they are resilient on their land. This is not something Israel is going to be able to quash, and that's why they're doing what they're doing in Gaza. Last couple of points I'm going to make here. She talks about the origins of river to the sea. Remember that when that phrase was so hot and taboo, oh my God, don't say river to the sea, you might offend people. It means genocide, it means taking away, it means killing all the Jews. Well, turns out, if you read the Likud charter, they're the ones who started this river to the sea nonsense. And that charter says a lot of crazy stuff that would make Hamas look tame.
They talked about from the river to the sea, right? Where did that statement come from? Look at the charter of Likud, the party of Netanyahu. They very clearly say from the Jordan to the Mediterranean is going to be Israel. And really from the Nile to the Euphrates, which means going into Iraq, into the edges of Egypt.
And she points it out here, and I'm so glad that she does, because Piers Morgan, it says they right in the Hamas charter all the time. That charter was revised. It's not even the charter that's in circulation now. But the Likud charter that she's talking about is still the Likud charter. The Likud is a political party in Israel, the party that Benjamin Netanyahu belongs to, the right-wing extremist that he pretends that he's just having to, negotiate with. He's as extreme as any of them. So thank you, Mother, for letting us know. And then the last point I'll make, again, an excellent display of Tucker Carlson's skills to play dumb. An American was beaten to death. There was a story out recently of an American who was visiting his family in the West Bank, and settlers beat him to death. Settlers are subhuman ghoul people who steal land and terrorize Palestinians, kill their animals, kill their cattle, abduct their children, burn their property. They are savages. They are terrorists, and they are the lowest of the low. And they beat an American to death. And get this, the cherry on top. Mother Agapia says most of these settlers are from Brooklyn, New York. I wonder if these are the same ones that came crawling up out of that tunnel. Probably shocked that they were getting reprimanded anyways because they're so used to running wild in the West Bank. Man, oh man, what an interview. They talk a little bit about Syria and Abu Jalani and how he's over there strictly as a puppet for the Israelis, how they made a huge fuss about Bashar al-Assad, who was still not great. But as Mother Agapia can attest, Christians were just part of society back then. And now nobody knows. There is a flight of Christians, Arab Christians, from the Holy Land, from holy sites in the Middle East, from the Fertile Crescent, from the Levant, and it's because of Israel. Because they've been living there for centuries without problem, next to their Muslim neighbors, without issue, for the most part. But something happened in 1948, and suddenly there's all this drama in the Middle East that's got everybody from Christian Amanpour to the late Tupac Shakur talking about peace in the Middle East. I wonder what that event in 1948 could have been. Real mystery. Anyhow, I really recommend watching this interview. It was eye-opening. I can't overstate the value of having a firsthand account from somebody who has a character as unbesmirchable as Mother Agapia. There's just no understating it. Watch the interview, watch the crash out from Israelis. I think we might do another video, the Gem, with just reactions to this, because there were some outrageous ones. But we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much if you stuck around till now. Bread in Captivity, out.